What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with your host, me, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler, and I'm taking your questions live today. And we have some fun topics today because we had a little NFL action this week. Obviously, this week, main topic, as by the banner, is going to be Dynasty rankings. I'm going to show you guys my Dynasty rankings. We're going to talk about guys that I'm a little bit higher on. Any questions you have on that, feel free to drop them. We are also going to do a quick update on rookie drafts because I have completed 2 rookie drafts officially now. So I've got some takeaways for you. Let me know. I'm going to let you know how that went down, things that I'm seeing in terms of trends, because I know a lot of you still have drafts to go. I know I still have drafts to go. So we'll go through that. And then NFL schedule release as well. So we've got a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and dive right in. I thought for the beginning, I'd just go ahead and start us off with talking about rookie draft updates. Again, I have completed 2 drafts. Just to give you a quick overview of those. One of those, I had all my picks, and these will be some good takeaways for you guys. Some observations that I have made. I had all of my picks in one of my in both of my leagues, but in one, I ended up trading away everything except my 4th round pick and then acquiring another 4th round pick to grab somebody so I didn't have to fight on waivers. I did not anticipate doing that. I love drafting rookies, to be honest. It's thrilling. That's my favorite part of Dynasty, obviously, competing and winning and week in and week out. But rookie drafts are just fun. It's fun to try and grab your guy, stake your claim. There is nothing more satisfying, I swear to you, than from personal experience, than being all in on Chase Brown, drafting him everywhere you possibly can. Obviously, coming in with that rookie season of like, okay, this was not what we expected, but hey, this is not a bad thing. We still have some hope there. And then having him literally turn into a top 12 back. There's nothing more. I'm sorry. That's where Dynasty just really gets you. You can invest in people in redraft, but that's the Dynasty aspect that just really makes it so much fun. Shooting your shot on these players, grabbing them. And so I love picks. I try to keep my picks. Even if I trade away my picks in season, I try to get them back. Like I try to get some kind of 1st round pick or a 2nd round pick or something. So the fact that I ended up trading away almost all of my picks in this draft was a little bit odd, but I will explain to you why that happened and how you can use that strategy potentially to your advantages and takeaways on that. So again, I was fully prepared to draft. But when I got to my first pick, which was the 107, my options were going for tight end, which I did need. I've got Kelsey. It's a contending team that got that had a 1st round bye and got booted. Or no, I don't know if I got the 1st round bye on that one, but I got booted immediately, and got Kelsey on it. Clearly last year, downturn, looking for a young tight end here. But at the 107, it feels just a little bit rich to be grabbing Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. I'm all for get your guy, but the more I sat there and thought about it, gotta love slow drafts, right? Because you can sit there and you can just really ponder and think about it, right? And then entice people into trading. So I thought about it and I'm like, okay, you can go tight end. You can go Emeka Ibuka. I think Emeka is a perfectly good 107 pick right there. And quite frankly, we may see him. My projection for him is that he's, not to be overly Ohio State on him, but I feel like he's on the JSN track, right? Where year 1, you're drafted into being the 3rd option on a team. Year 1 is disappointing. Year 2, everything pans out perfectly for you, and you're the talent that ascends to the wide receiver 1. I feel like that can happen for Emeka, so it's not a terrible landing spot. It was odd in terms of us wanting that initial, because we're thinking there are so many teams where he could go and immediately be that wide receiver 1, but at the same time, not a bad situation. We may have to give it a year, but and maybe even less than that, honestly, because we've got the situation of Chris Godwin's injury. He is a little bit aged, right? And Dynasty wise, guys get these ACL injuries and they bounce back, but you always get a little bit worried when you get that ACL. Like Stephon Diggs would probably be one that we're looking at. And we're like, okay, odds of this one popping back to where we thought, slim to none. Godwin's still got some years left in him, but it does make you concerned there. Will he be healthy to start the season? Will Emeka be able to immediately get into that role, that big slot role that we want him to be in, playing opposite of Mike Evans? And, he would thrive in that. Tampa Bay, I expect their defense to still be very much so like Tampa Bay's defense was last year. So I anticipate lots and lots and lots of volume from Baker Mayfield, and whoever is out there catching the ball is going to pay off big time. We've also got Mike Evans aging there. I still think we have another year out of Mike Evans. Didn't see any overall downturns, right? The injury was a little bit of a bummer, but overall, in terms of him, you don't see that kind of trending towards him having a breakdown year right here. So we're kind of waiting to see how this injury with Godwin pans out in terms of the initial year one effectiveness of Emeka in this offense. But regardless, 107 and beyond is very reasonable for him, because the reality of him being able to be a wide receiver one superstar, such as the comparison of JSN ascending, is a pretty quick turnaround. So that's perfectly fine. You could also go with running back in the position. For me personally, as I was sitting there kind of thinking through which running back I would want being a contending team, we'll talk more about this later when I get into the Dynasty rankings, but I was leaning more towards RJ Harvey. And I know that's controversial. It's controversial because everybody is in love with age and whatnot. And he is an older running back, and Caleb Johnson is young. But if you're in a contending position, Caleb Johnson might not be a guy that we can utilize immediately. And looking at 1 to 3 windows, again, we'll dive into this later, but RJ Harvey, I think, was the direction that I was going to go with there. So I'm sitting there ready to make my picks, and I put my pick up for a trade. After some careful negotiations there, I ended up moving 4 picks back plus getting the 201. Mathematically, it was a very fine move there. I gained an additional pick, was looking at the board, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to get what I want. Once I got to the pick, everyone was dancing around Cam Ward. It is a super flex league, but I've noticed this, depending on your league settings, super flex is incredibly critical. But in this league, we have, I think 3 wide receiver spots that we start in 2 or 3 flex, something like that. So quarterback gets a little bit diluted. I was already very strong there, and everyone is kind of dancing around Cam Ward. Both Warren and Colston Loveland went off the board. So as I was sitting there, I put my pick up for trade again. See what happens there. I traded that trade back pick, which was the 111, plus my 2025 second, plus my 2026 second, and I acquired Drake May and Pat Freiermuth. Awesome deal. Awesome deal. We'll also talk about Drake May a little bit more in a second, but that additional pick, again, I traded the 201 for Jordan Addison. So essentially I managed to flip everything that I had, with the exception of those 4th round picks, for Drake May, Addison, and Pat Freiermuth was a little add-in on there. So overall, my kind of takeaways is that as we're looking at these picks, and we're looking at these early rookie picks, and we're seeing a clear break off right in terms of value, don't underestimate if a player ends up following, or if someone is really targeting a player that they want very badly. There's still value in these picks. From my personal experience, I don't feel like you have to aggressively undersell if you're trading away. You can get excellent value. I believe that I got more out of that 111 than I should have. I think I won that one a little bit on Drake May. So looking at that one, I think that people are very flexible in pick values, because it's just a weird combination of fewer players that you see as having that higher ceiling. So if someone is targeting someone, all of a sudden that value for that specific pick that is for that specific player, it starts to go up. So in this depressed draft class, we can all admit that things are a little bit shaky, but because there are really specific players that people are wanting, you can still get value out of these picks. Normally, you would think it would be devalued a little bit. So if you are a little bit conflicted in terms of how to handle your picks, particularly if you're falling in the latter half of that first round and you feel like the value is not really there, don't be afraid to work trade offers mid-draft and try to make that happen. You can get value, and you can find someone that is aggressively trying to get a specific player. My other rookie draft was a lot far more straightforward. I did not trade any picks in that one. I did make a trade mid draft, but it did not involve any of my current picks. I got Travion Henderson, Jack Besh, Mason Taylor in the third, which I feel like that was excellent value. Brashard Smith and Chimere Dike. By the way, guys, in my other draft where I had the fourths, my fourth round picks were Brashard Smith and Chimere Dike. Again, on those guys, those are kind of my late round guys that I am a true believer in. Off season, I did quite a few articles around Senior Bowl prospects, combine, all of that good stuff. And those were two guys very early on in the process, particularly in the Senior Bowl, that stuck out to me. Brashard Smith kind of trending towards that, that Tyrone Tracy type of build of somebody who has that pass catching ability, can find themselves in an opportunity to push and bully their way. Maybe I can see that. I love Isaiah Pacheco, but I can see a reality where if he, hopefully last year was just the result of him dealing with that injury. And that's why Kareem Hunt ended up kind of being the preferred back as the season went on after he came back from that injury. Hopefully there's a recovery there to Pacheco being reinstated as the clear RB1. But if not, Brashard Smith is someone who I feel like could earn some favor in that offense. And even if Pacheco is still that main guy on early downs, could play very well off of Isaiah Pacheco, and Brashard Smith, just a fantastic fit there. Chimere Dike, that is another one that really popped for me early, just because when I'm looking at prospects that I feel like can translate immediately into the NFL. And we did kind of like right after the draft kind of get a lot of good confirmation from Tennessee, talking glowingly about how the versatility of DK and how he can essentially play any role within that offense. He's also very adequate and played a lot of special teams in college. So that's somebody who can immediately step into. You want those guys that have the ability to play on special teams, be that punt and kick returner, because that gives them that roster spot security. You're on there, that earns you the snaps, right? And I can easily see him kind of ascending, maybe even immediately, to that wide receiver 1 role or wide receiver 2 role opposite of Calvin Ridley. So that's another player that I'm just absolutely smashing in late 4th round. It's not easy. If you're drafting in Sleeper, the ranking is like super down there, right? So which is interesting. I get it, because he wasn't a premier prospect. Guys that people are kind of clamoring after in terms of those later round options that were darlings, pre-draft process or even during the year. He just wasn't one of those guys. He went a little bit overlooked there. So the value, you don't have to fight for him. He's an easy late round pick. Nobody's clamoring to get him. You don't have to trade up or anything. So that's one of my ones that I'm grabbing late that I think could have an immediate starting role there. Yes, the Tennessee offense probably will have some problems, right? We wish the best for Cam Ward. But I want a guy that is immediately on that field. So that's one of those guys for me. Has all the qualities in terms of excellent hands, excellent route running that you see out of guys that earn those spots and earn that trust from their quarterbacks immediately, especially a rookie quarterback who is going to need stability. Obviously, we got stability there from Calvin Ridley, right? Going to the Comets there. Got Addison. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I missed your comments. I'm so sorry. From BW, you got Addison, Freiermuth, and only sent away first and some seconds. I sent away 2 seconds as well. But in theory, those should be one was the kind of like a mid-second, and one should be a late second. I don't anticipate this being a situation where I'm not making the playoffs, so we should be good to go on that one. Got all those guys back. So yeah, that was a sweet deal. Did I need Drake May? No, but can you pass up Drake May at that value? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Comment from Chivini, Mason Taylor in the third, non-tight end premium. Yes. Yep. It was not tight end premium. And it's funny. It's weird. In another league, he went in the second, mid-second. I was a little bit surprised on that. I think maybe people were a little aggressive at tight end in that one, but it was late 3rd round or mid 3rd round on that one for Mason Taylor. And then appreciate the comment there from CK Comedy 100. Thank you so much. I love fantasy football all season long. Although I will admit, this has been a heavy golf for me. Last week on our first off-season show, I mentioned to you guys that off-season I've been doing a lot of work in PGA, DFS, and betting. And if you follow golf, it is the PGA Championship. I'm like getting the end of round updates. They just ended, I think, but I was getting the end of round updates. If you have any knowledge of that, I will say this, and you will understand my my love of this. Johnny Vegas, less than 1% own, and currently in first place. Who would be one of the less than 1% people that went with Johnny Vegas this week? Me. Let's hope it pans out and sticks. That would be an incredible win right there. Going back to the rookie drafts there. The picks that I had on the other one were Brashard Smith and Chimere Dike. And then after that, because there are a few more rounds in that league, it is a 3 running back lead. 3 running backs, 3 starting running backs, 5 starting wide receivers, 1 flex, 1 super flex. My other picks on that one in the later rounds were Marcus Yarns. And there might have been one more, and I didn't write that down, but Marcus Yarns was the other one on that one that may be a little throw on that one. I did mention that I did a trade mid-draft. And again, this is where I want to kind of, talk about Drake May here for a second. I got an offer. I was a little bit quarterback rich in that league, not fancy rich, maybe like a halfway rich. Like we had a nice 401k there, a nice good invested 401k. And I had Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, Drake May, and Geno Smith. And that's just a lot of quarterbacks, right? Do you need all those? In a 5 receiver league, I needed a little bit more depth at wide receiver. So I've got an offer from a quarterback needy team. It worked out perfectly for both of us. They were interested in both Drake May and Kyler Murray. For me personally, I do not. So that, I mentioned the other league where I got offered Drake May, couldn't pass that up and grabbed him. Got the trade request for Drake May, couldn't let him go. I'm seeing a lot of potential movements or requests around Drake May, and I get it because he probably is the more flexible and trade mobile quarterback, second-year quarterback right now. I personally can't let him go. I'm sure there is a price for which I could let him go, but at this point, looking for him in being a very popular trade candidate, oddly reasonable price right now, it does make sense. No, they don't have a true wide receiver 1 right here, but I was actually very encouraged by the offseason moves that and draft moves as well that New England made. I think they played it perfectly. I would have liked for them to be able to get a strong wide receiver 1 that is not Stephon Diggs, an aging receiver coming off a significant injury, but you do what you can. It wasn't a fancy free agent market, and trades, obviously, guys were technically on the market, but they were probably coming in very expensive. So they got what they got, right? We can hope that maybe we get some maybe second-year breakouts from some of those guys on the roster from last year, like Jalen Polk. May not happen, unfortunately, on that one. But we have the prospect of Kyle Williams as well. We have Travion Henderson added as a pass catcher, and I am very much so encouraged by the improved offensive line. I think New England did a fantastic job with that. So Drake May will stay upright. He's got that mobility. So even without the true wide receiver 1, I think, he still has such an extreme ceiling. So still a guy that as a contender, I'm very happy to roster on this one. So that was, what was the trade? I was Kyler Murray. I kept May. Sorry. I kind of left that part out. So I kept May. I traded away Kyler Murray, traded away Kyler for Zay Flowers and a first. Again, I would have preferred somebody a little bit better than Zay Flowers, but you can't be picky. Also, Kyler exactly is not in hot demand right now. So being able to trade him away, strengthening my depth, and getting a 2026 first, you can't pass that up, right? And I've got plenty of quarterbacks to be able to start for the next couple of years easily with May and Goff and hopefully Geno for a couple of years. So overall, good takeaways from these rookie drafts. You can don't look at this draft class and say, oh my gosh, we're so, the break off point is so dramatic. We see a clear dip in the late first, the second round picks, man, you're sitting there trying to decide like, at what point am I gonna, do I want to risk, I had this debate with myself as well. Do you want to risk it on a Matthew Golden and hope that he can finally be the wide receiver one that, as I wear my Green Bay shirt here, pulls away and becomes the wide receiver one there for Green Bay? Do you want to go with guys that probably only have wide receiver two upside there? Do you want to take a risk, or do you like? There's options there, but don't look at that and be discouraged. Work trades, maneuver, and whatnot, because from what I'm seeing thus far, drafts are coming out very, very interesting, very, very interesting. So this has been a fun rookie draft season. I've got one more left, and I'm super, super excited for this one because I got the 102 overall in that one, and it's IDP, so it'll be very interesting to see. I don't know what the first overall pick is going to do. In theory, with IDP and Travis Hunter, like I feel like Travis Hunter will be the one that falls to me. I think Ashton Genty will go first, and I'll get Travis Hunter and the ability to play him in a D-back spot. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens and pans out. It's like an IDP cheat code if that happens. So I'm super excited about that one. But we will take a quick commercial break here. I'll do a quick talk about the NFL schedule release, some takeaways on there. There's some good takeaways on the schedule release, and then we will dive into the rankings. I've got fancy screenshots to be able to show you guys. I'm really, really trying to work it here from the producer aspect here on the podcast. So stick around through this little commercial break. And I will be back right after a word from our sponsor.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with Superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams, and then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs, and then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes pick values out to like 2028. All of that plus the rookie guide, $25 value is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to All In and get $25 off.
All right, we are back, and I did want to show this comment real quick here from Chiveni. Thank you for talking about Chimbre DK. Hasn't been getting enough attention. Yeah, it's weird because I feel like the Titans essentially came out and said, like, this is a starting wide receiver for us. And like, I understand it's the Titans, right? Like, I get that. Our expectations for the offense aren't like through the roof. But at the same time, I mean, when a team is that vocal, it feels like we should lean in a little bit. Funny story on that. I remember when I first tweeted about him during Senior Bowl week. I got a reply or like a retweet from what I assume to be his mom. So fantasy analysts out there, people talking on Twitter, always remember people's families are watching. That's the second time that's happened with a player. So always remember, the families are all out there watching. All right, let's do a quick NFL schedule release, and then we'll dive into the rankings. NFL schedule release. My big prediction from the schedule release, Jackson Dart might not start until week 9 at best. My God, the NFL was cruel with that schedule for the Giants. And, some of that, it is what it is. The division you play in, you can't help that. But as a whole, man, the way that it's stacked, I am a little bit concerned because there's just no real good entry point for him as a rookie. So unless he just outright wins this job from the jump, and I don't know if they're going to go that way. And it's such a weird situation because I do still feel like Dable is on the hot seat and a GM as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I do think they'll start the season off with Russ. This is critical for us, probably more so in redraft, is not as much as Dynasty, because we're people that are drafting him in Dynasty probably aren't fully expecting to be able to start him right away. But I kind of predict we won't see a entry point for him until mid-season, maybe week 9. Just brutal schedule. And they have a late bye week. Man, week 14. Yeah, it's not good for them, unfortunately. Atlanta playoff schedule is very intriguing. I wanted to point this one out. They play Tampa Bay, which I mentioned earlier. Defense should be still a very advantageous one from a fantasy perspective. Then they have week 14, Arizona. Arizona's defense, I do think, will be challenging. They were stronger in the back half of the season. That kind of went overlooked. And they made solid improvements in the draft. So, but I do think that the offense will improve as well and kind of force higher point games there. So it shouldn't be the exact same as it was in the latter half of the season where it was just underwhelming point totals and just hitting unders. And then week 17, LA Rams, another strong defense, but again, offensive push to keep up with Matt Stafford and company. This one hurts my feelings. Green Bay's playoff schedule is dreadful, awful. Be very, very aware of that when they're at Denver. And this is the problem. If it were Denver in week 2, yeah. But I feel like this is going to be a situation where as we get in the back half of the season, we're going to see kind of that. And Denver's secondary was already fantastic and shut down. But with the addition that they made at corner, just absolutely fantastic addition that they made there. I kind of have a feeling that we're going to get into a situation where the back half there, that's going to be extremely difficult to throw on them. And it's already going to be, difficult to run on them as well. So any teams that are playing Denver in the back half, good luck to you. Feeling very, very uncomfortable with that one. They're at Chicago. Always a potential weather thing there. And then Baltimore at home. That is not good. The Rams have a favorable playoff schedule: Detroit, Seattle, Atlanta. This one I wanted to point out, Miami. I'm usually anti Tua Tagovailoa because unfortunately it works out every single year given the division that they're in, that he ends up with playoff schedules that are in terrible weather. And when Tua gets cold, it's not going to work, unfortunately. I get that. I too can't do my job in the cold as well. So I don't fault him for that. He is a warm weather guy and it just ain't happening. But finally a good playoff schedule for him. Pittsburgh, at Pittsburgh. Yeah, a little colder there. But week 16 at home against Cincinnati, and week 17 home against Tampa. So finally, we might actually see the Miami offense be able to be actually utilized in the latter half and playoff portion of the season. Thank goodness there. Cincinnati and Tampa at home in 16 and 17. We can't ask for. I mean, you've got the combination of perfect weather for them because they get to be at home, and then the combination of two terrible defenses. So keep that in mind. Just because Tua Tagovailoa at the end of the season has always been a complete nightmare. Nightmare. Seattle's playoff schedule is interesting. Indianapolis, LA Rams, and Carolina. And then Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay right there. We already talked about Emeka. We talked about Emeka Egbuka earlier. Tampa Bay's playoff schedule there goes absolutely crazy. Atlanta, at Carolina, and then at Miami. Beautiful right there. I'm already all in on a Baker Mayfield repeat season there. But again, investing in Baker in redraft, and honestly, even in Dynasty, as they continue to, as a cheap Dynasty ad, he's still relatively young. They're on a solid coaching track there. They figured out the offense out, and they're putting Emeka in there to kind of be able to transition into the potential retirement there or moving on point from Mike Evans. So again, that's another fantastic one for us to be able to look at. Comment here. Dable is probably going to slow play Dart and make sure he'll be back with the team next year. Just a little taste of Dart to whet everybody's appetite. Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. I just maybe he panics at the beginning of the season, and if they get off to a rough start, because again, it is a terrible, terrible schedule overall. And maybe Russ lays an egg. I don't know if they give Jameis a chance. We know how that goes. Love Jameis from a fantasy perspective. I feel like I'm slightly mad at the Giants because I feel like we, as fantasy managers, absolutely deserved to see Jameis Winston to Malik Neighbors. That would have been just the dumbest amount of yards and touchdowns that ever existed. It would have been in Malik Neighbors' Hall of Fame career with the amount of volume he would have gotten. Hate that. But I agree. Unless he has an absolute panic and is forced by ownership early on because they're on an aggressive losing streak early on in the season, I do think it's going to be a situation where we see Dart towards the latter half of the season at the end. Again, as you were saying, just to kind of give a little taste and then whet everybody's appetite, try and keep your job there. He'll play at some point. I can't fathom the entire season without him, but it really just a brutal schedule. All right. Let's talk rankings. I want to show, look at me fancy here, adding in actual graphics. I'm so proud of myself. If you're listening on the podcast, go check out the YouTube version. I actually I didn't make this graphic, obviously. It's my Fantasy Pros rankings. I downloaded it right there, but I put it up. So that's effort there. We've got the rankings here for my top 24 Dynasty running backs. I mean, it's hard to get very aggressively different, right, with Dynasty rankings. But I will say, one of the things that I am definitely higher than consensus on, and I said I touched on this a little bit earlier, is RJ Harvey. I get the concerns, man. I get it, especially because we're in Dynasty, right? And age is a real thing, and running back cliffs are a real thing. But if you're a contending team, and where you are able to draft him, because in theory he should be coming in like we're again going back through the earlier drafts. You're going to see Igbuka go first. You're going to see the tight ends likely go before him. We've got a lot of people that are favoring Caleb Johnson. So with RJ Harvey, he's coming in a very beautiful position for you to be able to draft him in the early second. I mean, if you want to reach late first, I have no objections to that, but it's a very reasonable location to get yourself an immediate RB1, immediate workload. I too have trust issues with Sean Payton. I do. We clamor for the Alvin Kamara. We know what he can do with running backs, with not just Alvin Kamara, with Reggie Bush and everybody. We know what Mark Ingram. We know what can be, but we've got trust issues after literally never being able to predict when a Denver running back would be utilized, right? It felt weird. And that's also part of not just the Sean Payton, just the lack of usability from Denver running backs through the Javonte Williams years was just very, very frustrating, right? So we've got some PTSD there from the running back position in Denver, but we're talking immediate workload. We're talking a guy that Denver traded up, or that Denver wanted to draft specifically. We're talking about a guy that Denver fits perfectly into Denver and Sean Payton's vision. We're talking about a guy who has receiving upside, who gives us all the fantasy things that we want. Like, I love a Quinshon Judkins, right? But unfortunately, we're talking about him going to a Cleveland offense that will likely have, limited touchdown opportunities. He's also, and he can catch, so that's not an issue, but we could get into a situation where he's, more of an early down guy that they pair with someone who can catch. I don't know if that's the case this year, just based off the roster. We can see how maybe the other rookie factors in there, and maybe they play off of each other. But when we're looking at RJ Harvey, we don't have to ask ourselves these questions. Yes, age is a concern, but the reality is, if you were contending, right, we're talking about a 1 to 3 year window. Are we really that panicked over the age of a running back? You may not be able to get the trade value out of him that you could ever get out of a Jahmyr Gibbs. But the reality is that even if he was 2 years younger, that value is still not going to be there, right? But he's a solid running back. He will have immediate impact. And if you're in a contending window, you want somebody who is going to be able to immediately step in there. Like I said there with Caleb Johnson, there's concerns there that he won't be able to step in immediately. Do we trust running backs in an Arthur Smith situation? No. I'm happy with what Arthur Smith was able to do last season with maneuvering around the quarterback situation, making stuff work with Justin Fields last season. We even saw Pat Freiermuth come through at the end of the season. So his overall impact on the offense, cool. But at the end of the day, massive commitment to an RB1 recently. Just hasn't been the case. So you do wonder if that's still going to be a committee situation where both backs are just, both him and Jaylen Warren are just incredibly frustrating for the near future there. And when we're looking at RJ Harvey, again, you got to take a look at the age and just look at the position as a whole and look at age. And I'm not talking about the agelessness of, oh no, the bottom of the rankings are cut off. Okay, I can read that to you. The bottom of the rankings are cut off. It's my banner. Let me remove the banner for a quick second there. Where is my banner? If you're watching on YouTube, I'm just going to quickly, there we go. So you can see the bottom of the rankings there. Thank you for that comment. But again, on that one there, when we're looking at ages of running backs, I'm not talking about the agelessness of Derrick Henry. I feel like we are seeing a shift towards that cliff not being as cliffy as it was before. Like it felt like let's look at a Saquon Barkley, injuries starting to pile up, ankles taking him out for 3 to 4 weeks, production overall, just struggling, gets into a better offense and suddenly looks like he's 21 years old, right? The cliff, it feels like perhaps, training and conditioning has just advanced a little bit. We're seeing backs just go a little bit further beyond what we were thinking. You do have to pay attention there, but don't let the age concern make you back off of the potential of what RJ Harvey can add into your offense and the fact that you're not having to invest a significant amount of draft capital on him as well. So there we go. Just to kind of talk through the rankings for those of you who are not, I realize that if you're not watching the YouTube, you don't know what I'm talking about here. Standard rankings first overall. Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Genty, Saquon Barkley. Those two kind of flip back and forth in my opinion. Achane, after that at 5th is where I think you kind of see like a little tier break there going into him, which, side note, I don't know if I talked about this on the last episode there, but I am seeing interesting value in Achane because of the clear tier dip there. He still has that same upside as the guys above him, but unfortunately, because he is tied to Tua Tagovailoa and the volatility of that offense being solely dependent on him, and when he's gone, the offense turns into dust, and Achane can barely get anything. That does factor in there and pushes it down, so it makes him a little bit more. If you're looking to kind of acquire a top tier, I mean, obviously it's difficult to get any of those guys, but Achane is maybe one that you can slip in and get a comparative discount there because of the tier break. Then at 6, we have Jonathan Taylor, followed by Omarion Hampton, Bucky Irving, Breece Hall, James Cook, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, my boy right there, Josh Jacobs, Travion Henderson, Quinton Judkins, RJ Harvey, who I just talked about at 16. I think that's maybe about 6 spots ahead of consensus on that one, so I am a little bit aggressive. Kenneth Walker at 17. 18, Derrick Henry. Oh my gosh, I'm getting tired of talking. Christian McCaffrey at 19, Caleb Johnson, 20, Joe Mixon, Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, and Alvin Kamara there. Moving on to the wide receivers graphic. Let me run through those. There we go. It updated real quick. Wide receivers. Again, pretty standard stuff here. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb. I have not made any adjustments based off George Pickens there. I hope Pickens, now credit, I do think I talked about this in the last episode. Credit to Dallas for making those moves. I don't ever like to give credit to Jerry Jones, but credit to Jerry Jones for making that move. It was bold. It wasn't extremely expensive there. They don't have to invest any money before they figure out if he's going to crash out or if he's going to succeed. So, hey, that was an excellent move for Dallas. I'm excited to see what that happens. I have not adjusted anything with CeeDee Lamb because 1, this is a 1-year thing to see if it pans out. And 2, they play perfectly off of each other. Dallas needs a wide receiver too. This should not be a massive impact to CD. Hopefully a little bit of a help to the offense as a whole. 4th overall, Malik Neighbors, followed by Amon-Ra, Puka, Brian Thomas, Nico, Drake London, AJ Brown, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Lad McConkey, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. is an interesting one because again, that's a lot different than what we were seeing last year in terms of dynasty rankings. If that was a trade target that you were looking to get a wide receiver 1, a potential value dip, a young talented wide receiver one with a high ceiling. Looking to make that move, hopefully another year under their belt, another offseason under their belt, get some more chemistry between him and Kyler Murray, and then get some better utilization in that offense. A lot of that was not Marvin Harrison Jr.'s fault, in my opinion. Just like usage was very questionable. Even in games where I remember the game where he absolutely went off at the beginning, right? There were like he caught maybe, I wish I had the statistic in front of me, maybe caught 4 passes or so, multiple touchdowns, and it all happened over 100 yards, and it all happened within the first quarter. After that, not a single catch, nothing at all. So utilization of him has to adjust. I believe it will adjust. After that, we've got Travis Hunter, Ted McMillan, who I love the landing spot for him in Carolina because I'm very pro Bryce Young, purely for the joy that he presents in life. He's so sweet, and just you gotta love watching him. Want him to succeed. I want him to do well. Getting him that true wide receiver one, and Ted McMillan, who I think will work perfectly within Dave Canales' offense. I mean, I could not have imagined a coach. Well, I mean, the many coaches I'm sure could, but I think Dave Canales really will know exactly how to use him. Very much so fits kind of into that Mike Evans mold. So it's a perfect combination there. He'll slot immediately into that offense as the wide receiver one. So super excited about that landing spot. T. Higgins at 17, Devonta Smith, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Rome Odunze, Terry McLaurin, and Xavier Worthy rounding it out. In terms of guys, and these guys are not on the top 24. I unfortunately did not have an option to go and get the graphic beyond the top 24 there, but a couple of guys that I'm a little bit higher on, younger guys that I'm a little bit higher on. They're interesting trade candidates. I talked about this one a little bit last week. Ricky Pearsall is one of them who is falling outside this top 24, who is young, who is a first round wide receiver pick, who is going to be in an offense with a quarterback who will be locked into a contract soon, and will have the opportunity to operate as the wide receiver one until Brandon Ayuk comes back. And just judging based off what we've seen in terms, we don't have a strict deadline or strict timeline in terms of the return of Brandon Ayuk, which sucks. But I would not anticipate us getting Brandon Ayuk back until mid-season, unfortunately. Hate that. But we're talking about Ricky Pearsall getting the opportunity, and we saw him pop at the end of the season last year and really show that he has that ability to step forward. I didn't see any issues with him. We have George Kittle that's now locked into another contract as well. And so, and Jawan Jennings, obviously. But I really feel like Pearsall has the opportunity to pop immediately week one as that wide receiver one in an offense that is going to need to push a little bit more volume because they're reworking that defense, right? They're making some additional adjustments. They let some guys go. They've got some rookies coming in. They've made some changes there. So maybe we see a little bit more volume push through the air as teams are pushing up on that defense just a little bit more this year. So it'll be very interesting to see. I think the value for Ricky is a little bit depreciated here, and you can make an offer on him and get good value out of it. And even when Brandon Ayuk comes back, while Ayuk ultimately I do feel is the more talented receiver within that offense, we still have yet to see him truly used as a volume receiver in that offense. And at this point, you kind of sit there and you wonder, is this just how they want to utilize Brandon Ayuk? We know he's capable of more. We know he's capable of being a top receiver. The talent is there. But from a fantasy perspective, it can be a little bit frustrating when you're getting those weeks where he only has 2-3 reception and he's getting the touchdown, right? Because they love to utilize him in the red zone. But unfortunately, it's not that big production that we're seeing. So the volume, in my opinion, could lean towards Ricky Pearsall, even when Brandon Ayuk is back. That would not be surprising. And we got to remember that we did expect this to happen in terms of Ricky Pearsall being able to transition into Deebo Samuel's role. That was what we all anticipated. Deebo is gone now. This is what we kind of figured was going to happen. Why are we not leaning into it? So just kind of keep that in mind as you're going through and you're looking for young players to potentially make moves on. And then, look, I am higher on Jack Besh. I am. You clearly saw that I mentioned that I drafted him in the second round of one of my Dynasty rookie drafts. I fully understand the skepticism, right? And ultimately, Bowers is probably going to be more the target hog here. Tight ends are volatile, right? We've seen that from, Sam Laporta having that fantastic year to coming down last year. But a lot of that shouldn't have been surprising because of his that being more touchdown dependent for him. He's not a consistently high volume kind of target recipient within that offense. Brock Bowers, on the other hand, feels like this is something that is going to stick, that he is going to be the Travis Kelce of this offense, that is going to be the first look. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have a secondary option pop up and be very productive. I love Jacoby Myers, but I do feel at this point we've got enough evidence here to say, like, look at him. And while I do believe in, later breakouts for sure, I think I talked last week about Nico Collins and players like that. Just keep your eye on them because you cannot write. I can't remember who exactly the wide receiver was, but you cannot write wide receivers that have one and first and second years that are underwhelming, and you can tie that to exclusively them being in a bad offense. Jacoby Myers has not been able to connect with that truly elite quarterback, and maybe Geno is a guy that can bring that stability to him. But at this point in his career, I do feel like we're in that solid. He's a wide receiver too, with a little bit of pop. And Besh can be, I hate to say the dynasty thing. He can be anything. He could be anything. And when I look at him and what I like about him, same kind of thing that I talked about when I was talking about why I like, as a deeper draft, Tim DK. When I look at Besh and things that make me drive higher in my rankings on rookie receivers, I'm not looking for speedy guys. Speed is cool, right? But at the end of the day, what's going to get you that opportunity is your versatility, your ability to play all over the field, your ability to play in the slot helps a lot, your ability to be reliable in terms of your routes and hands. You don't have to be a burner for early success. Reliability gets you on the field and gets you the ability to develop in game on day one. That's a big factor for me. So that is one of the reasons that I am higher on Besh. So a comment here from BW. What are your opinions? What are your opinions on the Texans rookies? Noel and Higgins seem like strong prospects. This one is a tough one for me because it is reliant on Noel beating out Christian Kirk. And I do think that's going to happen. I hate to say that because I've been pro Christian Kirk. I've been known occasionally to be a Christian Kirk apologist. But the problem is when I looked at him last year, and granted, offensively, that was his utilization with that offense was by design. Unfortunately, the way that they utilized wide receiver 1+2 and Gabe Davis, it was very, 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 very strange. And Christian Kirk took an odd backseat and really only benefited from wide receivers being injured. He has the talent. That's clearly there. If Noel can push him and beat him out and can show upside and earn that spot over him, and I think it's very possible because it's not like Kirk is on a long-term deal, right? I believe the more stable, offensive, steady production would be with Noel. Now, because Christian Kirk does factor in there, unfortunately, that does make me lean towards Higgins. I didn't want to lean that way, and it's nothing against Higgins. It's just that I do like Noel's fit within that offense if he can be that guy in the slot. But Higgins, I think, has a lot of promise too. I liked the moves that the Texans made there. I think they took the right approach there, getting both of those guys when we have the uncertainty, the painful uncertainty around Tank Dell. Like both of these receivers. Long term, I think they're both fairly on par. Immediate production, I think, probably leans a little bit more towards Higgins because it's very dependent on Noel being able to push Christian Kirk out of that spot. I'm not sure it'll be hard, but he is a veteran receiver, and he is a guy that plays that role very well. So we'll see. We'll see. But I like both of them as prospects. So these are two guys who I'm perfectly comfortable with drafting in the second just because of the upside that they have there. I don't think that either one of them will ascend to the wide receiver 1 of that offense. I truly believe that Nico Collins is that guy for sure. And the downturn that we saw last year, I attribute a lot of that to the offensive line being trash. I would have liked to see a little bit more of a splash in terms of the Texans being able to rebuild that, because they're gutting that offensive line. They've gutted the offensive line. They're starting over. Hopefully we see them operate as a cohesive unit early and be able to give CJ Stroud that time. But ultimately, I think the offense was really just hampered by that offensive line. So hopefully they're able to solve that issue with the group of guys that they got now. Moving on here, a couple of guys that let me go ahead and show my quarterback rankings. There's nothing flashy here with the quarterback rankings. It's just Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jane Daniels, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Drake May, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love. Again, nothing flashy there. I looked for guys that I specifically went through to see who I was significantly higher or lower than consensus. I'm not. I'm within 3 to 4 spots of consensus on these guys. So this is a fairly general, industry-wide opinion of these guys. Might be 1 or 2 off on a couple of guys, but really, quarterback is just fantastic. Not a lot of controversy there. Yeah, CJ Stroud bouncing back in the rankings in a big way. Yeah, but again, that offensive line there is what we really got to see. Drake May, for real though, talk about that choice, please. And I don't feel like that one is a super aggressive. I'm a few spots higher on that one, but again, overall, what I saw out of Drake May last season in literally what was one of aside from, let's say, Caleb Williams, I will give that one up to somebody who was just being rocked behind an unfair offensive line. Drake May showed a lot of upside from a fantasy perspective. The wheels were a lot more impressive than we anticipated there. Kind of like, a bonus. These mobile quarterbacks are showing that they aren't just mobile. They are running legitimate running threats from a fantasy perspective to be able to give us that extra boost in value. So him being able to throw in that rushing upside helped there, and the ability to showcase legitimate multiple. I should have gone through and calculated. He had multiple QB1 performances last season with an absolute trash situation, with no offensive line, with no pass catchers. Jesus Christ, man. That right there to show literal QB1 weeks with absolutely nothing on your team. Long term, I think the ceiling is incredibly, incredibly high for him. Going back to those rankings right now, long term, ultimately, really, let me hide the comment real here so we can see. Long term, because of his rushing upside and the fact that he popped without an actual legitimate receiver, assuming that they get a true wide receiver 1 next year, I can easily see him, man, I could see a reality where he does tilt up towards maybe moving up. I don't want to say this, and this is not a negative about Patrick Mahomes in any way, shape, or form, because he is Patrick Mahomes. Just we saw that as when we know what he can do from a fantasy perspective. But I do think that the Chiefs have gotten to that point where they know that they have the ability to not have to aggressively rely on him. And when that happens, it affects us from a fantasy perspective. So I can ultimately see Drake May getting up to that position and surpassing Patrick Mahomes, or honestly, if they truly have somebody step up as that wide receiver 1. And yeah, we've got some hope here for Kyle Williams. I think it was a good pick. I'm being cautiously optimistic because I wasn't aggressive on Jalen Polk, but I was really hopeful that he would be able to step in there and make an immediate impact. And that obviously just wasn't the case here. So that kind of PTSD does make me say, just gotta be a little bit careful with Kyle Williams, but he is being drafted in an appropriate spot there. And the reality is that he could be that guy. I wish, again, that it was anybody but Stephon Diggs. That, if they had been able to grab T. Higgins in free agency, that would have been amazing. But unfortunately, the Bengals made that legitimately impossible there. But yes, yeah, I'm a little bullish on Drake May there, and especially because I mentioned earlier in the show the value that you are able to get out of him right now. I think it's a very nice depreciated value. So he's a guy that you can trade for at a very reasonable price compared to, I mean, honestly, even guys behind him, I don't think that you can get the same value even out of a Bo Nix or Justin Herbert or Caleb Williams. So the value that you can get for a Drake May right now for the ceiling is something that I don't think that we can ignore. So that's a really, really solid trade candidate there that could ascend in the very near future. Another trade candidate who is obviously not in those rankings, or even a keeper candidate. And I talked about it when I talked about the George Pickens a little bit, but Dak Prescott is technically set up for a very interesting year. The Cowboys, I didn't talk about this in the schedule release section. The Cowboys had a ridiculous amount of primetime games. Perhaps the NFL knows something we don't. I don't know. But I do think that Dak is, again, set up for a decent comeback next year. We do have some question marks in terms of the offensive vision of the coaching staff. But at the end of the day, he's got CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. We wish that there was a little bit more of investment at running back, but we'll take what we can get. We got a much needed offensive line upgrade. I believe that if you can keep Dak Prescott upright, the value is there. He's been a very stable quarterback throughout his year, and perception is obviously very low right now in terms of his value. So that's a nice little cheap ad that you can get there for contending teams, little bounce back year here. And then we saw my RB12 ranking of Chase Brown. I believe I'm a little bit above consensus on that one. Not aggressive, but just a little bit above consensus on that one. Brown is the most intriguing veteran back, top 12, borderline RB1-ish that I think that we have in Dynasty. Just because despite the stellar season, right, and the upside and the versatility that he has in the pass game. And mind you, his usage in the pass game was not just checkdowns. And you got to remember the quarterback that you're dealing with here as well. You're talking about an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. And Chase Brown's utilization in the passing game was not just checkdowns. The man was very good at routes, very reliable hands, very versatile here. So from a fantasy perspective, as long as he holds onto this job, this is a weekly RB1 here. Do not panic over it. And I don't feel like from the Dynasty community, I don't think this is the case. I think this is some residual redraft voices coming in a little bit on there. But from a Dynasty perspective, Zach Moss is not a threat there. This draft worked out perfectly. We were a little bit worried that we would get a running back investment here. But Chase Brown is in a very beautiful spot here. Very beautiful spot. And then Chuba Hubbard as well is another one there. Chuba was ranked in the late, what was he, like 20? Let me pull up my rankings again. Chuba was RB 22 for me in rankings. That is another one that we have to take seriously here. The reality is that Jonathan Brooks, bless his heart, officially out for the entire 2025 season. We wish him the best, but that's rough. It's tough to imagine that he comes back to an RB1 status from that. We'll root for him, but the backfield belongs to Chuba Hubbard. The Panthers selected Trevor Etienne. That's someone that I picked. I believe that I spent a late round draft pick on Trevor Etienne somewhere. That's the other name that I missed. And it's interesting. He is an interesting ad because he can play a complementary role, obviously very excellent in the pass game, can be a change of pace back there playing off of Chuba Hubbard, but ultimately Hubbard is the RB1 there, and we have to anticipate Rico Dowdle, I don't believe is a threat. We have to anticipate the transition and believe in the transition of the Panthers offense. You got to get less skeptical around this, see the progress that they made. The addition of Ted McMillan, that just upgrades to the offensive line. This is a very well-rounded offense that has room to grow here. So that's another one as well. And then one more, because I run a little bit long here, and then we're going to head out. Courtland Sutton is one that I am really, honestly, surprised in terms of the vision that people have for him. Denver receivers obviously have been plagued by mediocrity for years, right? It's easy to assume that last year was an outlier season for him, but you can't look at the situation of him ascending and then Jerry Jeudy escaping Denver and having a career year as well. Career year for Sutton, new coach, new quarterback. Perhaps Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton were never the problem. Cortland Sutton finished as the wide receiver 13 in total points and wide receiver 23 in average points per game in half PPR, I believe. But that undersells the story. Obviously, Bo Nix got off to a little bit of a rough start to begin the season and then truly came into his own in week 5 and then just progressed rapidly, right? As a passer. Obviously the rushing upside was fantastic, but just really began to progress rapidly as a passer as the season went on. In the back half of the season, Cortland Sutton was wide receiver 8 in average points per game. Why are we not paying attention to that? This is a guy that we can add very cheap. He is the clear wide receiver 1. We had the addition of wide receiver in Pat Bryant in the draft. Maybe that can be a little something from a wide receiver 2 perspective, but I don't feel like that is something that will contend with him. We did have the tight end edition of Evan Ingram as well, but Cortland Sutton is the target hog in that offense, and a guy whose trade value is super good right now. A bargain here, and just because people may not be inclined to believe, especially because he is on the older side here. But he's finally got an actual stable quarterback. He said, comment here, Sutton just needs to stay healthy, and he's got the opportunity because he is the wide receiver 1 there in that offense. And Bo Nix, I know theoretically, we do fear sometimes those second-year regressions. We saw it from CJ Stroud, but Bo Nix is in a position to thrive. There are no flaws in their offense. Their offensive line is fine. They've got the addition of the run game as well. That'll take a little bit of heat off there. So again, that is another one that I am absolutely loving. But that wraps things up. I went a lot longer than I anticipated, but we had some good conversations here. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Thank you for joining. That wraps things up. As a reminder, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. If you're not already subscribed, make sure that you're subscribed to Player Profiler. As a reminder, we're also, we go live on the Player Profiler Now YouTube channel as well. So make sure you are subscribed to that so you get those notifications of us going live. And then if you're in the mood for one more subscription or follow, you can always follow me or subscribe at It's Tera Time, literally everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Appreciate your support as always. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Appreciate you all. We'll see you again next week. Have a good week. Enjoy it.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.